Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone and welcome to our video. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Raskia Aprilia with student number B1A1233163. I'm a law student at Universitas Jambi majoring in law and currently in my third semester in the International Class of 2023. Today, in this video, my partner and I will be discussing the topics from the course attempt participation and concurrence in criminal offenses with Sir Andi Agus Salim as our course lecturer.
Hello, my name is Farid Rahman Maulana. My student number is B1A123082. I am a law student at the Faculty of Law, Jambi University. And I'm also in my third semester in International Class of 2023. We are excited to explore the important concept of attempt, participation, and concurrence in a criminal law, which are essential in understanding criminal liability and how the legal system hold individuals accountable for their action.
Today, we'll covering three main topics. The first one is attempt, the second one is probation sanctions, and the third one is participation in criminal offenses. Without further ado, let's begin with attempt first.
Attempt is a concept regulated under Article 53 of the old Criminal Code and now under Article 17 of the new Criminal Code. In simple terms, an attempt occurs when a person has intent to commit a crime, but the crime is not complete due to unforeseen circumstances. This means even though the person might have planned and initiated action toward committing the crime, something external prevents the crime from being fully carried out.
As stated in the law, anyone who with intent and awareness undertakes an act intended to commit a crime, but due to unforeseen circumstance, the crime doesn't come to fruition may be punished. This shows that both mens rea or the guilty mind and actus reus or the guilty act are important for an attempt, even if the crime doesn't occur.
For an act to qualify as an attempt, there are three essential elements that must be present. First is mens rea or guilty mind. The perpetrator must have a clear intent to commit specific crime as stipulated by a law. This intent is mental state where the individual consciously plans to carry out an unlawful act. Second is actus reus or guilty act. The perpetrator must take concrete steps toward the commission of the crime. This could include things like preparing tools or moving toward the scene of the crime, indicating a clear intention to carry out the act. And the third is failure to achieve the intent result. Despite the intent and action, the crime does not occur. The failure could be due to unforeseen circumstances, such as intervention by a law enforcement, the victim escaping, or any other external factor beyond the control of the perpetrator.
For example, let's say Farid plans to sell a motorcycle. He prepares the tools and positions himself near the motorcycle, but a police officer intervenes before he can steal it. Although Farid didn't succeed, he is still liable for attempted theft because of his intention and actions. This demonstrates that even if the crime doesn't materialize, the criminal intention and action toward committing it are still punishable.
Leah harbored a deep hatred toward Farid and planned to poison his coffee to kill him. Leah prepared a lethal substance and intended to add it into Farid's coffee during a social gathering. However, Tina's neighbor witnessed Leah's action and became suspicious, promptly reporting them to the authorities. Law enforcement interfered before Leah could carry out the plan, apprehending Leah with the poison and other evidence in her possession. The legal analysis include the criminal act or actus reus of preparing the poison and intending to mix it into Farid's coffee, the criminal intent or mens rea of premeditated murder, and the relevant law under Article 340 premeditated murder and Article 53 in conjunction with Article 340 the attempt murder. Mitigation factor. Such a Tina timely intervention might reduce Leah's culpability, and the evidence include the poison and witness testimony from Tina. Ali harbored envy and hatred toward his neighbor and planned to burn down the neighbor house at the night. Ali purchased the gasoline, poured it around the neighbor house, and attempted to ignite it. However, Ali lighter malfunctioned, preventing the fire from starting. Frustrated, Ali discharged the lighter near the scene and fled. The lighter was later discovered by the investigator and linked to the Ali through forensics evidence. Ali was arrested shortly thereafter. The legal aspect of this case focused on attempt assaults with a criminal act or actus reus, including pouring gasoline and attempt to set the house on the fire. The criminal intent or mens rea is that the intentional and malicious desire to destroy property and endanger life. The relevant law applies to attempt arson under Article 53 in conjunction with the Article 187 of the Indonesian Penal Code. Evidence support the attempt include the gasoline residue around the house and the discharged lighter containing the fingerprint or DNA evidence. Aggravating the factor include the endangerment of nearby resident safety. Tony and Anton successfully broke the lock on the store main door using a hammer and a screwdriver. As they enter the store, the security alarm active and alerting the nearby residents and the store owner. Tony and Anton panic and attempt to flee, but they were quickly apprehended by the residents who had gathered in response to the noise. Law enforcement arrived and seized the tool as well as the surveillance footage from the store as evidence. The legal aspect of this case focused on the attempt thief as Tony and Anton action constitute an incomplete thief. The criminal act or actus reus include forcing open the door and entering the store with the intention to steal, while the criminal intent or mens rea is the premeditated plan to commit the thief. Since the thief was not complete, the relevant law would apply to attempt thief under Article 53 of the Indonesian Penal Code in conjunction with the Article 363, which concern the thief with forced entry. Evidence supporting the attempt include the security footage showing the break-in and the alarm activation lock. An aggravating factor include the use of tool to force entry.
Another case is Farid and Leah planned to burglarize a house by breaking open the main door during the owner's absence. They used tools such as crowbars to force entry. However, as they worked on breaking the lock, neighbors overheard unusual noises and investigated. The residents called Farid and Leah in the act, restrained them, and called the police. Farid and Leah were arrested on the spot with burglary tools confiscated as evidence. The legal aspects of this case focus on the criminal act or actus reus of attempting to break into the house and the criminal intent or mens rea to commit theft inside the property. The relevant laws include attempted theft under Article 53 in conjunction with Article 363 of the Indonesian Penal Code and trespass under Article 167 if applicable. Evidence supporting the case includes witness testimony from residents and the tools used for the burglary. Aggravating circumstances include the fact that the crime occurred at night, which could potentially increase the severity of charge under Article 363. And the last case that we could give you was targeted the child of his neighbor due to a personal dispute and decided to abduct the child from the front yard. One evening, approached the child with the intent to lure them away. However, a vigilant resident noticed suspicious behavior and intervened, preventing the abduction. The resident alerted others, and Yuno was detained by the community until the police arrived. The legal aspects of this case focus on the attempted kidnapping, with the criminal act or actus reus involving Yuna's attempt to take the child from their lawful guardian without consent. The criminal intent or mens rea is the deliberate plan to abduct the child. The relevant law applies to attempted kidnapping under Article 53 in conjunction with Article 328 of the Indonesian Penal Code. Mitigating factors include the prevention of harm before the child was taken. Evidence supporting the attempts includes witness testimonies from residents and any items or vehicles used in the attempt.
The punishment for an attempt is generally lighter than the one who commit the crime. This serves as a deterrent and recognition that the crime was not fully executed. The law acknowledges the potential harm, but also takes into account that the crime did not reach its full realization.
According to Article 53 of the Old Criminal Code, a person who attempts a crime may face a reduced penalty compared to the full crime. For example, if theft carries a 5-year sentence, an attempted theft may result in 2 or 3 years in prison, depending on the seriousness of the attempt and other factors. Let's now move to the topic of participation in criminal offenses, also known as penyertaan dalam tindak pidana. This concept comes from the doctrine of Dalaming, which was adopted from Dutch law and is part of Indonesian law. It refers to the act of participating in a crime, even if a person doesn't directly commit the offense.
The doctrine of Dalaming divided into two types. First is Dalaming berdiri sendiri or independent participation, and second is Dalaming yang tidak berdiri sendiri or non-independent participation. Let's first discuss Dalaming berdiri sendiri.
Deal-naming berdiri sendiri refers to a situation where a person, though not the principal perpetrator, is equally guilty and responsible for the crime. This type of participation is independent, meaning the person plays an active role in the commission of the crime, often by encouraging, assisting, or facilitating the crime without being the one directly committing the act.
For example, if two individuals plan and execute robbery together, but one of them does not directly take the property, yet actively help by watching for the police or providing tools, they can still be held accountable as independent participation under the doctrine of Dalaming berdiri sendiri. They might not be the one holding the weapon, but their involvement and intent make them equally responsible for the crime. Narcotic participation case. A was a drug dealer who instructed B to deliver a narcotics package to a buyer. C was responsible for packaging the drugs before they went sent out. Together, A, B, and C work in a concern to disrupt illegal narcotic. The police eventually apprehended all three when the narcotic package they had shipped was intercepted. All of the perpetrators, including A, B, and C, were charged under the Narcotic Law number 35 of the 2009 and Article 55 of the Indonesian Penal Code for being accessory to the narcotic crime.
So, another example that I could give you was A and B planned to rob a mini market at night. A was assigned the role of the main perpetrator who would enter and take the items, while B was responsible for monitoring the situation outside the store, and C acted as the getaway driver. As they were carrying out their plan, they were caught by residents who heard suspicious noises and alerted the police. All of the perpetrators, including B and C, were charged under Article 55 of the Indonesian Penal Code for being accessories to the robbery. Article 55 stipulates that anyone who participates in or assists the commission of a crime can be held criminally liable for that crime.
Document forgery case. A want to apply for a job at a large company but did not meet the required educational qualification. To overcome this obstacle, A asked B to help him forge a high school diploma. B, skilled in graphic design, used computer software to create the fake diploma. A then submit the forged diploma when applying for the job. However, the company suspect the document authenticity and report A to the police. A, as the main actor, is using the forged document was charged under Article 263, Paragraph 1 of the Indonesian Penal Code for document forgery, while B, who assists in creating the fake diploma, was also charged under the same article as accessory to the crime.
Another example could be A and B had a long-standing personal dispute. One day, A confronted B outside the office building and struck B, causing minor injuries. However, B had noticed that C, who had been secretly supporting A's actions, was standing nearby, cheered A on, and even called out to provoke B. After the assault, C made no attempt to stop A and instead provided support for the act. When the incident was reported, both A and C were charged. A was charged with simple assault under Article 351 of the Indonesian Penal Code, while C was charged under Article 55, which holds individuals accountable for complicity in a crime. Witness testimony and evidence of C's verbal support were used to prove C's role in the crime. Now, moving on to the second type, deal naming yang tidak berdiri sendiri. This refers to a situation where the person is involved in the crime but only to the extent that they act under the direction or control of the principal perpetrator.
In this case, the individual role is more passive or secondary, and they are not as independent in the crime execution. For instance, if someone is forced to assist in a robbery under threat or harm, their involvement might still be considered as participation, but it is not independent because their actions are under duress.
In summary, deal naming berdiri sendiri involves an active role in the crime, while deal naming yang tidak berdiri sendiri is a more passive or coerced role.
In both cases, participation in crimes carries legal consequences. In the Old Criminal Code, the concept of participation in crimes is regulated under Article 55 and 56. Article 55 defines the primary modes of participation, including the direct perpetrators or leader, co-operators or mad player, and instigator or witlocker. Article 56 addresses those who provide assistance or manipulate in committing a crime. This article establishes the legal framework for holding individuals criminally responsible, even when their participation is not direct or primary.
In the new criminal code or KUHP baru, the concept of participation is restricted under Articles 20 and 21. Article 20 outlines four primary modes of participation, including direct commission, commission through intermediaries, joint participation, and mobilization of others to commit a crime. Article 21 specifically addresses accomplices, defining their role as intentionally providing opportunities, facilities, or assistance during the commission of a crime. The new provisions maintain the principle of criminal liability for participants while providing more nuanced definitions of participation. Thus, understanding the nuances of deal naming helps us to grasp the full scope of criminal responsibility in cases of joint or assisted crimes. Whether the participation is independent or not, the law holds participants accountable for their involvement in the offense. And that concludes our explanation of the main topics related to attempt participation in criminal offenses and their respective sanctions. We hope that this video has helped clarify these important concepts in criminal law.
We would like to thank you all for watching. If you have any question or comment, feel free to reach out to us in the comment section below. Understanding this topic is crucial for deeper comprehension of how criminal liability works and how the law treats various forms of involvement in a criminal act.
Once again, thank you for your time. We are Reski Aprilia and Farid Rahmat Maulana, law students at Universitas Jambi, and we really appreciate you watching our video on attempt participation and sanctions in criminal law.
Take care and stay safe. Last we say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.